The new Dungeons & Dragons movie. Is it a natural 20 or all ones? Well, we're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of the Geek Watch podcast.
This is the Geek Watch podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 184 of the Geek Watch podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. I'm not going to go into any spoilers because you're seeing it tomorrow.
I'm seeing it tomorrow, but I haven't heard spoilers, but I've heard that it's Chef's Kiss. That is what, from other gamers, I've heard that.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about some general things. I don't want to go into any spoilers about it. And I was pretty much right in that it killed any possibility that Shazam had of rallying. Not that I feel like it would have had much of a chance, but Honor Among Thieves was the box office this weekend, and very good reason. But before we get into that, I do want to talk a little bit about box office because a bunch of trailers came out over the last 2 or 3 days.
It's like they're gearing up for this season, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think also there may be a little bit of, hey guys, come to the theater. Okay, I know we've given you a few stinkers. It's not been perfect, but please, we got some really good stuff coming up. And so there's been like a bunch of trailers. There was a trailer for the new, I think it's either a Disney movie or a Pixar movie, and I keep getting those mixed up. I think it's a Disney movie. It's called Elemental.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but I didn't know there was a trailer out for it, but I've seen artwork and images, and it's
they had a trailer for it in front of the Dungeons & Dragons movie, and I just remembered it. And of course, that's talked about the Secret Invasion trailer. Wow. I mean, for everybody that says the problem with Marvel is they're too jokey, this is not going to be that.
No,
it's not going to be so.
This is going to be your deep dark.
Oh yeah, this is definitely not going to be, at least the way the trailer is cut. Maybe there'll be some levity in there somewhere. Okay,
if Werewolf by Night was an homage to the 50s and 60s and even earlier than that, the first monster movies, then Secret Invasion is an homage to the 70s gritty invasion, body snatchers, The Thing. That's what you're going in here looking for.
Yeah, I certainly feel that's a part of it. I also feel like there's a heaping helping of Tom Clancy in there as well. That spy thriller.
Okay.
You don't know who to trust. You have allies, but how much of an ally are they?
Okay. And
people changing sides, and there's definitely that feeling of it also. So it's going to be an interesting mix. And I am definitely looking forward to that. Of course, we got a new trailer for Spider-Man Across the
Spider-Verse. Yeah.
And I'm really excited about that. I'm glad we're not having to wait till Christmas. And so we got that trailer, and they dropped a Barbie trailer, which this is not my market for sure. But it was hilarious.
Oh, it's great. All those big names. This is the who's who of Hollywood. Everyone wanted to be a part of this.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it certainly seems like a lot of fun. And having a baby sister, as I do, and she had Barbies.
Of course.
So there were a lot of little Easter eggs in there that maybe a gentleman of my age wouldn't particularly know about, except that I had a sister who had Barbies. When Margot Robbie's Barbie steps out of her high heels and the feet
stay in perfect position for a high heel. Yes.
Yeah, exactly like the doll. And I was like, okay, I see what you're doing there. I definitely see what you're doing there. But of course, you have a bunch of different Kens, including Ncuti Gatwa, who's going to be our new doctor eventually after 14, the return. So there's a lot of interesting little Easter eggs in there. Like I said, this is not necessarily a movie marketed toward me for a couple reasons. One of them, it's a comedy, and I think we've talked about this before. I have this weird thing about comedies. I love them, but when I see the trailers for them, I don't think that I do. It's weird. I'm always giving comedies a hard time. I always assume that a comedy is going to be stupid. I'm not going to like it until I see it, and then I love it. It's like I have this weird unjustified prejudice against comedies. I don't know why that is. There are very few comedies I've gone into and watched that I didn't like. but I just always assume I'm going to hate it. And it makes no sense to me. I don't know why that is, but it's one of these weird things about me. But again, I'm not going to say if in some weird situation develops itself and I find myself in a movie theater watching the Barbie movie, I'm not going to hate it.
Right.
So whatever happens. But yeah, we got to see that trailer and the Blue Beetle trailer.
Oh, the Blue Beetle trailer. Wow.
Yeah.
That came out of nowhere. And I really feel, as I was watching it, I forgot that I'm watching a DC trailer. It felt like a Marvel movie. It feels like DC, Warner Brothers, they're taking a page from Marvel. Just watching the trailer, you see it's going to have that family dynamic. You're really going to care about these characters and what they have to go through, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and it looks really good, and it is technically an old DCU movie because the official beginning of the new DC universe under James Gunn isn't going to be till like 2025. It looks like they're going to adopt this movie as and they're going to annex it and say, okay, we're going to make it canon in the new universe.
Bridget.
And I think that's a good idea.
Oh, yeah.
Because it certainly feels like Blue Beetle is going to be, certainly it's moving in the direction that they're wanting to move in the DC universe in Warner Brothers. It feels like a new kind of movie.
Right, and I think that maybe because Blue Beetle is one of the lesser known, who's more Young Justice, maybe Teen Titans kind of character who later got into the Justice League, that there's not as much pressure on Blue Beetle like there is on a Batman or a Superman or a Wonder Woman. Like, it has to be this way. Superman's costume has to have trunks, and it doesn't have that pressure, and no one's looking for something special because, really, I believe maybe animated is really all we've gotten so far of a Blue Beetle. Maybe
besides the video games, of course.
Oh, yeah, well, I don't play video games, so I wouldn't know. But it looks so good. The effects obviously look really good, and the actors, just the little bits that we get of them in this trailer, you really feel that dynamic of that family. So I am absolutely excited to see Blue Beetle.
And the trailer looked amazing, and it does have that feeling of what DC could be doing in the future. And of course, if you remember many a year ago when the Marvel Cinematic Universe started out, the movie that kicked it all off was Iron Man.
Iron Man, yes.
And although some people said, oh, this just seems like another version of Iron Man. Maybe, but there's some differences for sure. There's definitely going to be that family element. A lot of the stuff we talked about in Miss Marvel we love, that family dynamic is going to play huge in this movie. They're going to have 3 generations of family involved in it.
Right.
And the director of the film, I can't remember his first name. I know his last name is Sato. He said that this movie is going to be unapologetically Latino. He said it is a Latino movie. This is going to be the first superhero movie that has a Latino lead actor. But he's saying that culture is going to play really heavily into this movie. And again, for the same reason we enjoyed Miss Marvel, because of that deep dive into a culture, this is going to be the same thing. If you love Miss Marvel, you're probably going to love this movie too.
And if you haven't watched Miss Marvel, watch it.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Trust me.
Oh, yeah.
Trust me. You will love it.
Yeah. If for no other reason, you need to get caught up because the Marvels is going to be coming out later this year. So you need to get at least caught up with that. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. And not that I thought the movie was destined to be terrible. DC's outings, the last few, haven't really hit. And it's been a problem. And I'm sure that Warner Brothers is a little bit worried. But I think this is a good movie to maybe break off from the DCEU and say, hey, this is the direction we want to start going in. And it looks great. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm definitely looking forward to the Blue Beetle movie.
And I think I talk about it way too much on the podcast about my favorite trope being extreme situations while arguing about mundane things.
Right.
It's right there. I love it so much. In the middle of a gunfight and you're arguing about your taxes. I love that.
Oh, yeah. And that's something that's been a trademark of Marvel, not just in the movies, but also in the comics. You have that mixture of, superheroes, but also mundane situations and daily life and having to deal with that. And it's nice to see that in a DC property, and I hope this is something that carries over. And I hope it does really well because right now, Warner Brothers needs a superhero hit. They desperately do. And I hope that this is going to be it. And I suspect that Flash is going to do really well, even though you're not going to be able to build an awful lot off of that tentpole. But they can certainly set up a few things, which we can hope for. And then, of course, we get Aquaman. And that, I don't know if we get Aquaman before Blue Beetle. I think that we do. So that would mean that Blue Beetle is officially going to be the last movie of this iteration of
this
DC
era,
in the movies. This phase, we should say. But hopefully it gets to carry over, and I think that would be awesome.
Yes.
But again, I don't want to go into any spoilers, but oh man, I do have to talk about the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Yeah.
And because there have been Dungeons and Dragons, a movie or two in the past that didn't...
Shall not be spoken of.
Not that I say that I hated them. One of the Dungeons and Dragons movies, of course, the one that everybody thinks about that has Marlon Wayans in it. And it had Tom Baker in it as well. So I'm kind of forced to like it a little bit because there's Tom...
There was one made in 2000. Was that it? Okay. So a 23-year-old movie.
So, you had Jeremy Irons in it as the villain.
Yes. I do. I've seen it, and had it not been called Dungeons and Dragons, if it had just been another fantasy movie, maybe it would have done better. But you have all these people going into it who are fans of Dungeons and Dragons, and you see this movie that has nothing, even all that is that there's a dragon in it. That's all you got as far as incorporating anything that you would recognize from the game. Yeah,
it's basically a fantasy movie. And they say Dungeons and Dragons. It didn't have to be, But we do have to talk about this movie because it doesn't have that problem. They mention Baldur's Gate in the movie. But I do want...
Magic missile.
Yeah, so there's a lot of... I will say at the beginning, there is one little pet peeve that I had about the movie. And this is just me. It doesn't ruin the movie. But the big pet peeve I had was during the opening credits where they say... based off the Hasbro game Dungeons and Dragons. And I hate the heck out of that. Because, first of all, I'm old school, and I remember TSR. And they're the ones that invented the game.
Right.
Hasbro didn't invent this.
They just bought it.
They just bought it. And to be honest, Hasbro has been more of a detriment to Dungeons and Dragons than they really helped it at all. Dungeons and Dragons has done well in spite of Hasbro, not because of Hasbro. That's just my little personal thing, and it just irked me a little. Yeah, it helped having this next generation of gamers trained by the original, and so many homebrews and the like have enjoyed it that way. Oh, yeah. But, like I said, it was a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, not a big deal, but it was like fingernails on a chalkboard, But, of course, Hasbro's film division, E1, helped produce the film. And we get the film because of them. Okay, that's fine. Just stop trying to screw up the game, guys. That's all we're asking. But, again, I don't want to go into any details about the movie. I was a little bit worried because it was like a little over 2 hours. Yeah. And I was thinking, does a Dungeons and Dragons movie, does it really need to be 2 hours? Because we talked before about Cocaine Bear and how it just hit at 90 minutes, and it was perfect, and I was like, I didn't want this movie to basically overstay its welcome. Overstay its welcome, yeah. And it didn't. It really didn't. It was epic. And here's one thing I have to say about the movie generally, and you know this as well as I do because we're both longtime D&D players. There's a certain tone when you're playing the game around the table with your friends. There's those serious moments, but there's some weird comedy things that happen, especially when you roll the ones. Yep. And things get magic, and things all of a sudden you have screaming mushrooms, and so something weird and funny happens on a cave. This movie absolutely has the personality of people sitting around a table and playing. Wonderful. It is that tone. It feels like exactly how an adventure would go, and you're playing it around the table. Okay. So, fantastic. I really enjoyed it. The acting was amazing. All the actors were great in it. And I am going to say this. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm just going to point it out. There's a cameo. There was an actor who was a friend, and he or she was asked if they would do a small role in the movie. He laughs knowingly, and you'll know why. But I was shocked. I didn't know this was coming.
Okay.
But it's one of those, like I said, it's a cameo and you're like, oh, that's great. And it comes at a really awesome time. Now, if you're a D&D fan, generally speaking, especially like in the early 80s, there's another big homage to that you'll notice when if you know what it is, you'll definitely recognize it when you see it.
Okay.
But I had to say it was great. It's the first time in a D&D movie that you get a tiefling character, which was great. And I can't remember what the actress's name is, but she was the young Beverly in the new It, but she's a tiefling character and a wild shape. She transforms and all that stuff, which is great.
Love it.
So yeah, but you get a lot of those really great Chris Pine, good Lord.
Yeah.
And Michelle Rodriguez, holy cow.
Of course. Yeah.
Perfect barbarian character. Some people have said kind of like Drax, except she's not naive. She's extremely smart.
Yep.
But she'll beat the crap out of you.
Yes.
But,
as always.
yeah.
Every time Michelle Rodriguez graces the screen.
There's a lot of great villainy that happens in it. Hugh Grant just chews up the scenery wherever he goes.
Yeah, I saw an interview that he did, and that was really funny. He said, "I'm told I'm a rogue," and that was great.
Yeah. From start to finish, it was great. And, of course, because it was put together as a D&D movie, there are D&D references in there. You've seen them in the trailers we talked about. There are creatures in there that you're like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
And, yeah, maybe next week when we get together, we can talk about this a little bit more, maybe go into some spoilers.
Okay.
But, yeah, what I loved about this movie is it really did feel like you were sitting around.
Someone's rolling.
And somebody's doing, and you're there with your friends, with your bag of Doritos and your Mountain Dew.
I attack the darkness.
That's right. And it has it has that mood and feel that unless you've actually played the game, you wouldn't know. So it feels very much like this was put together by people who understood, what makes that game fun and great and what makes it, what it is.
So the gamers that are like the kind of famous Joe Manganiello and Judi Dench and Vin Diesel are big D&Ders. That's all you're going to tell me? There's nothing, maybe?
What, you wanting a spoiler? Is that what we're asking for?
I'm just wondering if maybe one of those was the...
No.
Okay,
no,
all right.
I'll say no, but
Okay.
I will say that we have talked about this actor, he or she, many times in this podcast, and we'll probably be doing so again rather soon.
All right.
Because there's something big coming up for that actor, whoever he or she might be.
All right.
We will just say that. But yeah, immediately it's going to be obvious.
Okay.
You'll be like, oh, this is great. And what's wonderful is it's not just a character that you just see in the background and notice them and, oh, isn't that cool? They're part of a scene. And it's a really good scene, especially when you realize that this actor is basically sitting in front of a green screen and not acting with anyone. It was very much, you remember in Peacemaker where you had Jason Momoa and Ezra Miller who came in and they filmed that little section. It was very similar to that. But there was, like I said, it was a really interesting scene. It wasn't anything that was throwaway. It wasn't one of those, oh, isn't that kind of cool? We got to see this. No, it was an important scene.
Plot integral.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And again, it's an actor that wasn't advertised. You didn't know they were coming.
Surprise.
And then they just rolled in and did a great job. It was awesome.
Okay.
But yeah, we are definitely going to have to talk about this. Now, you say you're going to go see
tomorrow. Yeah.
You're going tomorrow. Who are you going with? Anybody?
My D&D group.
Oh.
Yes.
Field trip.
Yes.
Awesome.
Field trip.
Then what you definitely have to do for me is you guys have to talk about the movie afterwards because I definitely want to hear what they have to say about it.
Okay.
Because again, like I said, as a D&D player, it felt the most realistic to me as far as that tone.
Awesome.
It felt like a game. And that for me was really what I
Tell
wanted.
me, was there a scene where you were like, they rolled a 1?
Yeah.
Yes. That's what I want.
Yes.
That's what I want.
Oh, yeah. There are definitely some 1s, and there are some definite natural 20s that hit as well. And you know when those moments are.
Okay.
You know when those moments are, but oh, yeah. Chris Pine rolled a 1. There were moments where I felt that moment.
Bardic inspiration.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But yeah, I cannot wait for you to see this movie, and I can't wait to talk about it again next week, and we can maybe go into some spoilers. And I really feel like this movie, this next weekend, it's probably going to be number one again, I would say. I'm not sure.
Word of mouth is going to make it even bigger.
I think so. I think this is going to be the surprise breakout hit.
Okay.
And theaters have needed that because, especially in the type of content that we like to watch, we haven't had a lot of really positive stuff out there recently. But if these trailers have anything to say about it, and the shows that are coming up in the near future have anything to say about it, I think our drought is over, but I guess we'll find out.
We shall see.
And with that said, we come to the end of episode 184. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.